Elon Musk laughs at a reporter's loaded question. His reply was savage. The air in the room was thick with anticipation. It was a press conference like any other, but for some reason, today felt different. Perhaps it was because of the growing scrutiny surrounding Elon Musk's latest ventures. The world was watching, not just his companies, but him. After all, when you're the CEO of multiple tech giants, everything you do is under a magnifying glass. Elon sat at the front, his usual calm and collected demeanor not betraying the pressure that was on him. His sharp eyes scanned the room, briefly meeting the gazes of a few reporters before focusing ahead. His mind was on the tasks at hand, yet the quiet murmur of the crowd seemed to hang in the air like a soft buzz, a steady reminder of the media circus that was always just a few questions away. The conference had started as expected, routine, almost mechanical. Questions about the latest developments at Tesla, updates on SpaceX missions, and a couple of inquiries about his personal life, though he usually deflected those. Elon was used to this, after all, but today there was an edge to the questions. A loaded question had already made its way to him, just waiting for its moment. Then, it came. The question that no one saw coming. "Mr. Musk," the reporter began, her tone polite yet sharp, "many people are starting to question whether your ventures are really as innovative as you claim. Some even think you're just a master at marketing, not actually pushing the envelope when it comes to tech. What do you say to that?" The room fell into an almost unnatural silence. The reporter's question was not just a simple inquiry, it was a challenge. A loaded question designed to provoke, to put Musk on the defensive. The air was thick with expectation. Everyone knew the reporter was hoping for a controversial response. They wanted drama, and they were hoping Musk would give it to them. Elon leaned back slightly in his chair, his fingers loosely clasped together. He didn't flinch. He didn't even seem surprised. His lips curled into a faint, knowing smile, and for a brief moment, the tension in the room seemed to evaporate. "Well," Elon began, his voice light but deliberate, "I've been called a lot of things, but master at marketing is a new one for me." The room chuckled softly. The tension was still there, but Musk had diffused it, if only for a moment. He continued, his tone now shifting to something more casual, almost playful. "You know," he said, pausing to make sure the reporter and the room were hanging on every word, "it's funny how people seem to forget that the cars we build can drive themselves, the rockets we launch can land themselves, and the internet we provide to remote areas might just change the way the world connects. But hey, if calling it marketing makes you feel better, sure. I'm a marketing genius." There was a brief silence again, but this time it was different. The laughter had died down, and there was a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. The reporter, clearly expecting a heated argument, seemed taken aback. Elon wasn't upset, he wasn't defensive. Instead, he had turned the question back into a joke, making light of the whole situation. But the reporter wasn't finished. "You're not concerned that your public persona might be overshadowing your company's true potential?" she pressed, her voice more intense now, clearly not backing down. The room held its breath. The challenge had been thrown, and the audience was waiting, eager to see how Musk would respond. Elon's smile faded, and he leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing just enough to let the reporter know this wouldn't be another casual reply. "Well, if I had to worry about that, I wouldn't have had the energy to send people to Mars," he replied, his voice now calm but dripping with that familiar, understated confidence. "But I guess that's just the price of being at the forefront of change. People love to find something to criticize." The room shifted again. There were whispers, some reporters scribbling down notes, others exchanging knowing glances. Musk had deflected the jab, but he hadn't given them the drama they were hoping for. Elon leaned back again, his face breaking into that trademark half-smile. "But really," he said, his tone light once more, "thank you for reminding me that I'm doing something right. It's the criticism that makes us stronger." The reporter, now clearly unsure of how to proceed, faltered. Her questions had been deflected so effortlessly, so calmly, that she was left scrambling for her next move. She had expected him to become defensive, to fight back, But instead, she had been met with nothing but sharp wit and an overwhelming sense of confidence. Musk wasn't the one on trial here, she was. Just as the room seemed ready for more, the moderator stepped in, signaling the next question. But the moment lingered, the laughter, the subtle tension, the feeling that something was about to happen. Everyone in the room knew the stakes were high. They were watching history unfold, one interview at a time. The reporter had expected to put Elon Musk in a corner. Instead, she had only given him another opportunity to showcase just why he was so successful, his ability to turn any situation to his advantage. And as the next question was asked, the crowd's focus shifted back to Elon. But no one was quite sure what to expect next. The savage reply was still waiting, just around the corner. The energy in the room had shifted. The reporters, once uncertain about Elon's calm, were now more eager than ever to press him further. The challenge had been thrown, and Musk had sidestepped it effortlessly. But the reporter, seemingly unfazed by her failure, wasn't willing to let it go. She wasn't the only one. Many in the room could see that this interview was becoming something much bigger than just another Tesla update. Elon Musk, with his usual confidence, sat back in his chair. He was unfazed, almost relaxed, his fingers steepled in front of him as if he were pondering a great philosophical question. His calm presence seemed to throw the reporters off, making them more determined to poke at him. The reporter who had originally asked the loaded question was clearly annoyed, but she was skilled at keeping her composure. She straightened in her seat, adjusted her notes, and leaned in just slightly. It was a silent signal that she was not done with him yet. "Mr. Musk," she began again, her voice firm but trying to keep a professional veneer, "many people believe that you're more of a showman than a true innovator. Your critics say that your ambition often overshadows the work being done at your companies. How do you respond to that?" Elon smiled slightly but didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced around the room as though considering the weight of her question. The other reporters were watching him closely now, sensing that something was about to unfold. They were waiting for the next move. "You know," Elon said after a beat, his voice carrying an almost playful tone, "Showman, huh? I'm not sure how to respond to that, because I've never thought of myself as a showman. I thought I was just trying to make the world a better place." His words were light, almost dismissive, but there was an underlying layer of sarcasm that few could ignore. The reporter frowned slightly. Her follow-up was quick, her frustration seeping through the cracks. "But it's hard not to think that your personal image is playing a bigger role than your actual achievements," she said, her voice gaining an edge. "Take your recent ventures, the Mars colonization plans, the electric cars. They've made waves, but there are some who say it's all just spectacle. How do you explain that?" Elon's eyes twinkled with a knowing gleam, but his expression remained neutral. The tension was palpable. The reporter had clearly decided to go all in. She wasn't going to back down, and this time, it was clear she wasn't just trying to push his buttons, she was trying to unnerve him. "Ah, I see," Elon said, his voice rich with irony. "So, my goal is to send humanity to Mars, reduce carbon emissions, and make transportation more sustainable, and that's just spectacle, right? I guess I missed that memo." He paused for effect, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "But I'll tell you what, if being a showman means helping change the world, I'll take it." A ripple of laughter spread across the room, but the reporter wasn't deterred. If anything, her stance grew more aggressive. The crowd knew she was playing for the drama, trying to get Musk to snap, to show any sign of weakness. "You're not worried about the impact your personality has on your companies, though," she pressed. "You've become a polarizing figure. Some argue that you're making it harder for your companies to be taken seriously because of your antics on social media, your constant attention-grabbing stunts. Are you worried about the damage it could cause in the long run?" Elon paused this time, the room holding its breath. For a moment, his face became unreadable, and the room fell silent. Had she struck a nerve? Was he about to lose his cool? The air in the room seemed to thicken, and for the first time, it appeared that the reporter might have gotten under his skin. But no. Elon wasn't the type to be swayed easily, and the silence was merely a setup. After a long, deliberate pause, he leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing just enough to let the reporter know he wasn't playing around anymore. "Look," he began, his voice cool and steady. "I'm not in this for the fame. Never have been. If I wanted attention for the sake of attention, I could have stayed in Silicon Valley and played the game like everyone else. But I'm not interested in playing it safe." He let the words sink in, his gaze locking with the reporter's. "If you're waiting for me to apologize for trying to make a difference, it's not going to happen. If that's too controversial for you, then maybe you're in the wrong room." The room seemed to hold its breath as Elon's words hung in the air. It wasn't a confrontation, it was a statement of fact. Elon wasn't here to be liked. He wasn't here to cater to anyone's expectations. He was here to do what he believed was right. And if that meant upsetting a few people along the way, so be it. The reporter, clearly taken aback, hesitated for a moment. She wasn't expecting such a firm, unapologetic reply. It was like trying to poke at a wall made of steel. Her next words came out a little more carefully, as though she had realized just how much she had underestimated the man in front of her. "I didn't mean to suggest you shouldn't push boundaries," she said, her voice softening slightly. "But how do you handle all the criticism?" Elon leaned back in his chair, a small, knowing smile curling at the corners of his lips. "I don't," he said simply. "I keep doing what I'm doing. I let the results speak for themselves." The room fell silent once more. The audience was beginning to feel the weight of Elon's response. It wasn't just about business or technology anymore. It was about a man who refused to bend under pressure. A man who could take whatever the world threw at him and keep moving forward. Elon Musk was playing a different game. And in this press conference, it was becoming increasingly clear that no one could quite keep up. The reporter, visibly rattled, tried to regain her composure. She'd pushed as hard as she could, but Elon Musk's calm confidence had deflected every jab she'd thrown. She wasn't the only one in the room who seemed to be on edge now. The rest of the reporters, once eager to see a confrontation, were beginning to feel the tension building. They knew something was about to happen. Elon wasn't the type to show aggression, but he wasn't afraid to call people out either. The media had been trying to catch him off guard for years, to break him down, but each time, he had walked away victorious. Today was no different. As the minutes ticked by, the room seemed to grow heavier with the anticipation of the next exchange. After the brief silence following his last words, Elon sat back, the casual confidence in his posture almost palpable. His hands rested lightly on the table in front of him, fingers tapping idly in a rhythmic pattern, as though he were contemplating his next move. The air seemed to hang in suspense, and for a moment, it almost felt like time had slowed down. But then, without warning, the reporter threw another question into the air, this time with a sharper tone, desperate to shift the dynamic. "Mr. Musk, you've been known for your off-the-cuff remarks and controversial opinions. Many of those on social media have praised your transparency, but others believe your comments only create more chaos. Do you think you've gone too far with your public persona?" she asked, her voice colder now. The question was clearly a tactic to provoke him, to catch him in a vulnerable moment. It was designed to make him confront the persona he had built for himself, a persona that some people found controversial and divisive. But Musk didn't flinch. He didn't even bat an eye. Instead, a slight grin tugged at the corners of his mouth, his eyes twinkling with something more than just humor. "You know," he began, his voice smooth, almost amused, "the funny thing is, I've been accused of going too far my whole life. People said I'd never build a car company, never land rockets, and definitely couldn't send people to Mars. Yet here we are." The room was silent as he let his words sink in. Everyone was leaning forward now, hanging on to every syllable. Elon had taken the question and twisted it effortlessly, turning it into yet another demonstration of his unshakable self-assurance. The savage reply was already taking shape. It wasn't a personal attack, but more a statement of fact, delivered with a biting sense of irony. He continued, his tone now slightly more pointed. If by going too far you mean that I'm doing something that hasn't been done before, then sure, I'll take it. But if you're saying I'm causing chaos, well, chaos is what happens when you don't have the guts to try something new. There it was. The savage reply. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't an explosion of anger or frustration. It was quiet, cold, and piercing. A single sentence that encapsulated everything Musk had built and everything he stood for. The reporter's expression faltered. She hadn't expected this kind of response. The crowd in the room, who had been anxiously awaiting a dramatic answer, seemed to be taken aback by Musk's unflinching poise. There was a brief pause as the weight of his words hit everyone. For a moment, no one knew how to react. But then, almost imperceptibly, the reporter shifted in her chair. She wasn't going to admit defeat in front of the cameras, but it was clear that she had underestimated Musk. His calm defiance had thrown her off balance. Instead of being intimidated or defensive, Musk had turned the tables completely. She pressed again, though with noticeably less conviction. But don't you think that sometimes your unpredictability might cause problems for your companies? I mean, you're the face of all these ventures. How do you keep everything running smoothly when you're constantly under fire for your public actions? Musk leaned back, his smile never fading. It wasn't that he didn't take the question seriously, but rather that he wasn't bothered by it. He didn't have to justify his actions. He didn't need anyone's approval. The world's constant scrutiny was something he'd learned to ignore long ago. I think, he replied, his voice cutting through the air, that being the face of something means more than just making sure everyone likes you. It means standing by your vision, even when it's unpopular. I've been on the receiving end of more criticism than most people could handle, but guess what? I'm still here. And so are my companies. The room had gone completely quiet now. No one dared to interrupt him. Musk wasn't just talking about his businesses. He was talking about himself, his ability to weather the storm, his unshakable belief in his own path, and his refusal to bow to societal pressures. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze now fixed on the reporter as he delivered the final blow. Some people want to change the world. Others just want to complain about it. I'll let you figure out which one I am. It was a masterful response. No anger. No frustration. Just pure, unfiltered confidence. And it was so powerful that it left the reporter speechless. Her next question was lost in the air, overshadowed by the sheer force of Musk's words. The audience in the room shifted in their seats, feeling the heat of the moment. Some of the reporters exchanged glances, clearly impressed by how effortlessly Elon had handled the situation. The power of his reply wasn't just in its content, it was in the way he had completely taken control of the conversation. He had shown them, once again, that nothing could rattle him. As the silence lingered, the tension in the room dissolved. Elon had not only turned the tables on the reporter, but he had made it clear that he was in command of this narrative. The savage reply was more than just a comeback, it was a statement. And it was one that would resonate long after the press conference had ended. Elon Musk sat back in his chair, his fingers still gently tapping the table in front of him, his eyes scanning the room as if nothing had happened. To him, this was just another day. But for everyone else in the room, it was far from ordinary. The atmosphere had shifted from tense curiosity to stunned silence, and the room felt charged with the energy of his savage reply. The reporter who had tried to challenge him was visibly shaken. She had asked a loaded question, hoping to provoke Musk into an emotional outburst, but instead, she had received a lesson in composure and confidence. His words had hit like a well-aimed dart, precise, sharp, and without a hint of hesitation. And now, she was left scrambling for her next move, but the damage was already done. The moderator, sensing the shift in the dynamic, cleared their throat and tried to regain control of the situation. "Let's move on to the next question," they said, but it was clear that the energy in the room had changed. The reporters, once eager to fire off their next questions, were now more cautious, unsure of how to approach Musk after that powerful response. The fallout from the exchange was immediate. Within seconds, social media erupted. Clips of Musk's savage reply began to circulate, and the reaction was instantaneous. Supporters flooded Twitter, praising Musk for his confidence and his unapologetic approach. The phrase, "I'll let you figure out which one I am," became a viral sensation, with thousands of tweets, memes, and comments celebrating his quick wit and his refusal to back down. But it wasn't all positive. Musk's critics, always ready to pounce on any opportunity to tear him down, were quick to point out what they saw as his arrogance. They claimed he was too dismissive, too confident, and that his behavior only proved that he was more interested in making himself the center of attention than focusing on the work of his companies. On one side of the debate, Musk was being hailed as a hero, a man who had the courage to stand by his convictions and face down the media. On the other side, he was being accused of ignoring the legitimate concerns about his approach, his persona, and his public image. Back at the press conference, the room was buzzing with whispers. The reporters who had once been eager to ask their questions were now hesitant, unsure of whether they should continue. The moderator, sensing the tension, tried to steer the conversation in a new direction. But it was clear that the savage reply had changed the tone of the entire event. Musk was no longer the subject of the interview, he had become the one controlling the narrative. Elon seemed unbothered by the commotion. As the questions continued to roll in, he answered with his usual poise and wit, never once allowing the previous exchange to shake him. His responses were measured, direct, and, as always, laced with that unique Musk charm. But there was something different now. Every word he spoke seemed to carry more weight. His previous statement had cast a long shadow, and no one in the room could forget it. As the press conference came to a close, Musk stood up from his seat, adjusting the sleeves of his jacket. He gave a slight nod to the reporters, who were still trying to process the aftermath of the earlier exchange. The room was buzzing with activity, reporters scrambling to file their stories, while others remained in hushed conversations about what had just transpired. Outside the conference room, the media circus was already in full swing. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and social media was flooded with reactions from every corner of the internet. It was clear that Musk had once again turned an ordinary event into a media spectacle, and not in the way anyone had expected. As Musk left the building, he was met with a mix of cheers and criticism from the crowd of journalists gathered outside. But he walked on without missing a beat, his face a picture of calm determination. The world could debate his words all they wanted, but Musk wasn't concerned with the opinions of others. He had said what he needed to say, and that was enough. In the following days, the media fallout continued to grow. Headlines dominated the news: Musk dismantles reporter with savage reply, Elon Musk takes down critics in epic showdown, and Musk's brutal confidence shocks the media. Social media platforms buzzed with opinions, memes, and discussions about the incident. Supporters celebrated his unrelenting confidence, while critics tried to spin the event into a discussion about arrogance and ego. It wasn't just the media that was talking. Elon's inner circle, his executives, colleagues, and those close to him, all weighed in on the fallout. Some admired his ability to stay calm under pressure, others questioned whether he had been too harsh. But for Musk, the response was clear. The world could analyze his words, dissect his persona, and debate his methods, but none of it would slow him down. Elon Musk had proven, once again, that no matter how hard the world tried to tear him down, he was unshakable. His savage reply had not only silenced his critics, it had reinforced his reputation as someone who would always stand his ground, no matter the cost. The media storm from Musk's savage reply had reached a fever pitch. Everywhere you looked, people were still talking about it. Headlines, hashtags, news reports, all were still fixated on the moment when Elon Musk had effortlessly dismantled a reporter's loaded question with a cool, savage retort. But while the world buzzed with its opinions, Elon Musk remained, as always, unbothered. In the days following the press conference, Musk went about his business as usual. The controversies surrounding him, the media frenzy, the debate on social media, barely seemed to register. Musk's ability to shake off the noise was something that had become almost legendary. The reporters who had been at the press conference, who had watched in awe as Musk dismantled their attempts to rattle him, found themselves grappling with the aftermath. Many tried to spin the situation into their own narrative, some praising Musk's confidence, others decrying his approach as dismissive. But no matter what side of the argument they fell on, they couldn't ignore one undeniable fact: Elon Musk had come out on top. Back at his companies, the reaction was no different. Tesla, SpaceX, and his other ventures had all experienced a small but noticeable uptick in support. Musk's followers, inspired by his unapologetic stance, rallied behind him. His social media accounts were flooded with messages of support. People were more determined than ever to back him, knowing that his confidence and drive were exactly what the world needed. But it wasn't just his supporters who noticed. Critics, too, couldn't help but acknowledge the strength of Musk's position. Behind the insults and accusations, behind the media's attempts to tear him down, there was an undeniable respect for what he had achieved. He had faced the full brunt of public criticism and still came out unscathed. It was clear that the savage reply had shifted something. Elon Musk had always been a polarizing figure, but now he had solidified his role as the man who wouldn't be pushed around. He wasn't just the CEO of multiple tech companies, he was a symbol of resilience, innovation, and defiance. The media's attempts to undermine him had only propelled him further into the spotlight, and now, more than ever, people were watching. As the days wore on, Musk continued to speak his mind, but always with that same calm confidence. He was never one to sugarcoat his words, and his response to the press conference controversy was no different. When asked about it during a private interview, Musk merely chuckled and shrugged. "It's simple, really," he said. "If you're going to criticize me, make sure it's for something that actually matters. I'm not here for the spotlight. I'm here to make things happen. If people can't handle that, that's not my problem." It was the same unfiltered honesty that had always marked his career. His words, as usual, were a reflection of his unshakable belief in his own vision. He wasn't interested in playing the game that others wanted him to play. He was carving his own path, no matter how many critics stood in his way. The savage reply had become more than just a moment, it had become a defining statement in Musk's career. People now understood that if you tried to challenge him, you'd need more than just a loaded question to take him down. Elon Musk had proven, once and for all, that he was unbreakable. No matter how hard the world pushed, he would always come out on top. In the end, the reporter who had tried to rattle him found herself at the center of a media firestorm of her own. Her name, once a simple byline in a news outlet, was now synonymous with one of the most memorable moments in recent media history. Her attempt to trap Musk had backfired, and she had become just another footnote in the ongoing saga of Musk's rise. The interview had been a calculated risk, one that had failed spectacularly. And though she never publicly admitted it, there was a sense of resignation in her. She had underestimated Elon Musk, and in doing so, had handed him yet another victory. As for Musk, life continued on as usual. His ventures progressed, his ideas grew bolder, and the world watched in awe as he continued to push the boundaries of what was possible. The savage reply would forever be a defining moment, not just in his career, but in his legacy as one of the most formidable figures in modern history. For Elon Musk, it wasn't about winning arguments or taking down the media. It was about one thing: building a future. And if that meant facing the world's criticisms with a calm smile and a savage reply, well, that was just part of the process. The world could debate his methods. They could criticize him all they wanted. But at the end of the day, Elon Musk would always be the one setting the course, and the world would be following him.